This is Dr. Amy here, and we're here for another conversation, y'all. Let's have a conversation with Life Conversations with Dr. Amy's podcast. I have my guest here, Mr. Cain Parrish. He's coming from Australia, y'all. Yep, I'm back on the black couch. We're going to have a conversation. You know, relationships is the mainstay of conversation today in society. So Mr. Parrish here is going to give us some tips and pointers, and we're going to talk about what men want. What do men want as far as relationships? Because, you know, us women, we're trying to figure out, we know what we want, but what do they want?
That's the $1 million question, right? Hard to drill into some sort of secret sauce.
Yeah. So Mr. Cain, he is a writer, educator, and a relationship expert. Thank you for joining me. It is actually midnight, almost midnight where he's at. And he joined me this morning because I'm 9 o'clock where I'm at in the morning.
Couldn't be more different then by the sounds of it. Well, yeah, thank you for having me.
All right. Well, let's tell us more about you, Mr. Parrish.
Well, obviously, I'm from down under, from Australia, and I spent quite a while in my sort of earlier days struggling with relationships, struggling with social skills, trying to piece together how to actually like form a connection with another human being. And for one reason or another, I've always, whenever I've struggled with something or been bad at something, I've put a lot of effort into figuring it out and trying to crack that particular code. So I spent a long time studying, I spent a long time practicing. And it got to the point where I turned what was previously a weakness into a strength. And now I try and help smooth that transition for other people through my writing, through my teaching, through the private community that I host. I try and make it easier for other people to learn the same skills that I learned, and maybe people don't have to make the same mistakes I did or struggle with the same things that I struggled with. So yeah, that's my shtick.
That's good. I was gonna ask what was your motivation, and you just explained it. And it's good that you offering us that knowledge as well. Thank you for allowing me to conversate with you today, and we're gonna have a conversation. So you are a relationship expert. Do you like coach couples or coach singles? What is your forte?
Yeah, so inside the, like I said, the private community that I've got, the social circle, I take a lot of bookings for people that want specific advice on specific subjects. That's usually how I sort of frame it, because I try and put out as much content as I can on my website that, covers every sort of base on a very generic kind of front. But, there are a lot of people, both couples, singles, triads, whatever sort of arrangement, whatever circumstance people find themselves in, where they want particular advice or something, their own circumstances weighed in on. Or I try and, interact with people on Reddit, try and get through, whatever community I can find and offer sort of solutions to people's problems in a more, I guess, specific or action-oriented way than just trying to, proffer generic advice, So yeah, coaching, something I've done in the past. I was a hypnotherapist for a few years, so I'm no stranger to a good old-fashioned one-on-one session.
So let's get into it. What is it that men want as far as relationships? What do they, when you're counseling or coaching somebody, what do men say they want in a relationship?
A lot of the time, it boils down to people having a need or a desire, and they're looking for someone else outside of themselves to be able to fulfill that at a very broad, very general sort of like strategical level. Most people, I think, I would probably sort of generalize that to both sexes, are looking for someone that can fulfill whatever their idea of their ideal relationship, whatever their needs are, whatever experiences they're not having, whatever feelings they're not getting just by themselves or in their single life. They look and turn to a relationship to give them that. So a lot of men that, typically we think of things like physical intimacy. A lot of men don't have a lot of physical intimacy. They're not, close with their male friends in that particular way, obviously. They don't have a lot of experience with it in some cases. They struggle sort of fulfilling that part of their life where, we're humans. We crave touch and company and closeness and intimacy. And that's one of the big ones, the driving factors that lead to men chasing something in a relationship that they might not be getting otherwise. But there are, half a dozen different things that I could think of off the top of my head, like communication, emotional vulnerability, safety, companionship, just all of these sorts of things that, you know, very general sort of human needs, probably represented on like Maslow's hierarchy somewhere, that, yeah, they come up for people.
Okay, so I hear a lot. Some men don't like a woman to pursue them. What do you think about that? Like a woman pursuing a man, or even just what they say, shoot her shot. Just
Mm.
let her know, let him know that she's interested in him.
Yeah, so I try my best to support and encourage women shooting their shot. Um, it's easier for me, or I suppose have a more preference towards it because I'm polyamorous. I'm sort of non-traditional in that sense. I'm not particularly conservative in many ways, so I wholeheartedly encourage and support the idea of women having agency and moving away from some of those more traditional gender stereotypes in that particular arena where it's, you know, the man's obligation only. I know a lot of men do or don't like it because of, you know, complicated emotional circumstances or beliefs about how masculinity and femininity play a role in dating or finding relationships. So it's an individual decision, and it often comes down to what a person particularly values for themselves as to whether they would like a woman to sort of approach them, or they would find that off-putting or something they didn't appreciate. But on the whole, I think it's much more healthy for society. It's much more healthy for relationship culture, and it's a much better idea for women to have the agency and the ability to approach people that they find desirable. I think it's very unfair of society as a whole to not allow women the opportunity to go after someone that they think is attractive, to not have the opportunity to walk up to someone that they find appealing and say, hey, you know, I like you. I'm attracted to you. I think you're interesting, whatever it might be, like whatever you find appealing about that person. Like women should have that opportunity. I don't see why we would try and gatekeep that just because of some archetypal standard of male gender roles or whatever it is, the reason that we sort of hold on to those values.
Yeah. You mentioned masculinity. I hear that a lot.
Mm.
Like women, displaying masculine energy. Men don't like that. We want to be soft in our femininity. But then we also need to be authentic, our authentic self. It's not that
Hmm.
we're trying to display masculinity, especially a lot of us independent women. We're just doing what we have to do to survive and take care of our family, especially those like me and that was a single parent raising her children on her own. So it's like when you hear that, it's like, I'm not trying to be masculine. I'm just trying to survive. So
Yeah, you're just doing what's natural to you, and that's it. Yeah, I think it's odd to try and put a label on those kind of things, or like I said, I don't want to gatekeep things by just labeling them a masculine thing or a feminine thing, and closing off opportunities or locking down people that would just rather be acting authentically. But for people that would be worried that they're, you know, excluding potential partners by acting contrary to what they're supposed to, like if they're a woman and they think they need to be feminine, or if they're a man and they think they need to be masculine, like in the same way that we have a whole spectrum of sexuality where there are people that are very attracted to men, very attracted to women, or somewhere in between, people are attracted to masculinity and femininity in much the same way. Like there is, like for myself, I'm pansexual. My attraction is based on what I interpret from a person rather than like fixed concepts about a person. And I'm personally very attracted to the feminine, the feminine energy, all the traditionally feminine markings of a person. A lot of the aesthetic, a lot of those attributes I find very appealing. That's just how I'm wired. But that doesn't mean they have to come from a woman. You know, if there was a man that was presenting in a very feminine way or had a lot of those same very stereotypically feminine attributes, I personally find that very attractive, and that's just me. So there are people out there that will find almost anything attractive for almost any reason. You're not locking yourself out, you're opening yourself up to the right people being attracted to you for the right reasons.
that's good. So when you say that feminine, define that for us. Like when you say you prefer somebody that's displaying their feminine energy, define that. Like what is me displaying my feminine energy?
Yeah, so we've got things that we intuitively understand to be feminine or masculine. And a lot of those things are either built into us or sort of given to us by how we're raised, the environment we're put into, things like that. So, we think of particular clothing options. We think of makeup. We think of all of the stereotypical associations that come along with a woman presenting themselves as a woman, for whatever societal terms that sort of goes into. If we go back 100, 200 years, what was considered feminine might be different. Now we're in a new environment. I personally think it's things like grace and subtlety and certain charm to it that masculine sort of directness and assertiveness doesn't necessarily have. But that's just because of the environment that I've found myself in. A lot of people would differ in their definitions. A lot of people have different opinions on what the feminine is and what the masculine is. But deep down, somewhere internally, we hold on to that definition for ourselves. And for me, like I said, it's that sort of, there are women have curves, women have particular facial features, they have like body type, they have the way they dress, the way they speak, the way they act, the values that they hold, the things that they want out of life. There are all things that we can consider more feminine or more masculine. And again, they're built into me from my conditioning, my environment, the circumstances that I'm in. Everyone's going to be individual in that regard. So yeah, asking what is a woman, you have to sort of pick your battle on that one. Like, is it a biological question? Is it a cultural question? Like, where are you going with that kind of thing?
Yeah. So I hear a lot that men are visual. Like if they not don't feel that they're attracted to that woman, they won't even approach that woman. Without even getting to know that woman. It may be something, personality wise, that's great about that woman, but if they don't immediately have an attraction, will most men not even approach a woman if they're not attracted to them?
Well, first off, that's a really excellent example of something that's considered typically masculine, is the idea of visual attraction. We sort of make the assumption that female attraction is more nuanced or more varied across like a number of different sort of things rather than just immediately like what I see is, what I'm into. But to answer your question, the likelihood of a man approaching someone is probably baked into how much they're immediately drawn to that person. And it's very hard to convey your personality from a distance. I get this all the time. Like it's, if in theory, if personality is the most important thing, if I should be developing like what I am in here, if I should only be concerned with the internal, like why am I not getting approached? Like I'm a lovely person, this and that and the other thing. I get this question all the time. It's like, why is no one approaching me if I'm so great and so well developed as a person? I'm like, well, are you not putting out the right external signals? Like I can't see what's inside a person. And neither can any man at a bar, like, or, in a grocery store or wherever else anybody gets approached. Like if they don't like what they see, if there's not something immediately about the external that's going to draw me in, I have no reason to approach. The same way that if I see a piece of food, I don't have like a compelling desire to eat it if I don't think it looks appealing. We eat with our eyes. That's how it works. It could be the best, most nourishing, most nutritionally well-rounded, best tasting food that I've ever looked at or seen or been put in front of. But if I don't have a compelling reason to go over there and sort of indulge myself, then, it's just not going to register to me. And I would never want to like actually compare human beings to food in any way. It's just the idea of like, we've got to be drawn in by something first. It's a visual game first and foremost. And then once the conversation started and once you sort of start to actually have a back and forth, then you get to have, all of your personality shine through and retain that person through the compelling parts of your personality.
Yeah, that's true though. When you say about the food, like if it doesn't look appealing, I'm not gonna order it or eat it.
Yeah, and yeah, like I said, it feels reductionist to sort of compare people, especially women, to like a piece of food. But like that's the world we live in. If something doesn't look interesting to us or doesn't immediately pique our attention, we're not going to go over there. We're not going to interact with it. That's just how the world works. We take in too much information to be able to like try and judge things on a 75-point scale. We've got to have some reason to even get into the same room in the first place.
Yeah. Well, for me, I'm monogamous and I want a man that displays not so much masculinity, but leadership. I want to know that that man has my back, even when I'm in front of him or if I'm not there with him, present with him, godly, that's gonna just, like if he asks me, what do I want to eat? Or you want to go out to dinner? He takes me to wherever, not be waiting on me to decide. I want that person to make some decisions as well and not
Sure.
wait for the woman to decide, we both should do it mutually.
Mm.
That's just some of the things I prefer. And it's not
Yep.
all, oh, they got to be dark, 6 feet tall. Yeah, I do want them to make, enough money to be taking care of themselves to live comfortable.
Mm.
But all that superficial stuff, no. But yeah, I want somebody that's gonna lead.
Yeah. And you developed an idea of what you wanted over a period of time. Like I'm assuming had experiences with people that were, less what you were looking for and more what you were looking for. And you were like, hey, I like that. And I don't like that. And now you're here. You know, this is the world we're in.
And of course that they're vulnerable. They can display some of their femininity, be intimate, touch. Of course we learn each other love languages, things like that. What do you feel about online dating?
That's a big question. Look, I think I support online dating in a vacuum. Like the idea is really good, the idea of meeting people where you wouldn't otherwise, like opening up your ability to meet people and giving you a wider pool of options to choose from, or like facilitating people getting to know each other in a more easy, comfortable, straightforward way. Like that's cool. That's a really good thing. But the reality of online dating is that it is a lot of for-profit companies with their main agenda being profit, doing their best to squeeze as much money as they can out of lonely people. And a lot of the times, statistically speaking, that happens to be men. Is that these companies will do everything in their power to make sure that the thing that they are advertising, which is connections, doesn't occur, because if someone gets into a relationship, they get off the app. That's usually how it works. So we're sort of doing something very counterproductive, where we're handing control of our love lives and our ability to meet people to these companies who have the most vested interest in gatekeeping our ability to meet people. So yeah, if there was a way online that we could just facilitate meeting each other and connecting and going on dates and all that good stuff, I would be all for it. But the reality of online dating that we have now, it's toxic. It does absolutely no good for your mental health. It ruins a lot of good things about the human connection and the ability to meet people. It's only gotten worse with time, and I can assume it's only going to get worse. Like they just released a, I think, $500 a month Tinder subscription. If that's not like considered an actual predatory act, then I don't know what is. That is the most, like, one of the most mind-boggling, disgusting things I've ever heard.
Wow, I agree. Like over the years, I've noticed that the online dating has gotten worse and worse over the years. Nobody wants to get outside and meet anybody. They want a texting relationship. They don't want to meet up. I'm more a traditionalist also, and I
Mm.
for the man to say, let's go on a date. Like initiate that first date.
Shouldn't be that crazy, right? Is the idea to just go outside and like actually speak to someone and meet someone in real life. Like it's not that
Yeah.
far-fetched a concept.
And then you find a lot of them are just lonely, want somebody to talk to. They're married. They're not even serious about, a long-term relationship. They're just on there to play games.
The bad faith actors ruin it for the rest of us. Like if everyone was legally obligated to put what they were actually looking for on their Tinder profile, and if, that was a mandatory requirement that we had to be truthful for, you'd find a lot of people having a lot better of an experience. If all of the people that were only looking for long term got matched up with only long term, and everyone was like held accountable to that, like that's what's great about meeting people in person, is that you can't play games as easily. Like it still happens, of course, but it's harder to escape the idea of like just looking someone in the eye and being like, "Hey, yeah, I only want a casual arrangement," or "Hey, I'm looking to get, serious with someone. I want to get married. Like I want to have a family one day. Like I want to build that kind of thing with someone." So yeah, over the internet, where like it's a face on a screen that's like not even a real human, it's very easy to just treat that like it doesn't matter, like to just hand wave that off and just disregard it, I guess.
Yeah, I had a guest on here previously. She was a relationship expert. So I got a woman's point of view. And she gave us a lot of pointers about recognizing red flags, some of those manipulation techniques, ghosting and love bombing.
Oh yeah, classics. Yeah.
And you're online dating. She was a fan of, she supported online dating, but she
Mm.
come across somebody and their first conversation piece was, "Hey, beautiful." That's a red flag right there. That's letting you know, okay, that person may be gonna love bomb you. Skip, swipe left. That first line, "Hey, beautiful." She said from experience, that those type of people, they're
Yeah,
they're not serious.
that kind of those compliments, like very sort of shallow, easily applicable to everyone. It's a cheap way to build or try and build some sort of rapport with someone if you don't have any interest in actually like genuinely fostering a connection. A lot of people that would, try and just jump straight into those conversations are looking to shortcut their way to some kind of relationship or intimacy with someone. And it's, yeah, usually more manipulative than it is sincere. Or on the other end, it is someone that is being sincere and is just trying to offer a compliment, but maybe doesn't know the best way to go about it. So, it's never really a good thing, but there's always reasons for people doing what they do, I suppose.
Well, then I'll tell them, why don't you seek a relationship expert advice on how to communicate?
Look, I don't know if I'd recommend everybody did what I did and study for 10 years before going outside and talking to anyone, but at the very least, a little bit of practice couldn't hurt. You know what I mean?
What was your first date story? Can you tell us a
The
story?
first date I ever went on. God, all right, that takes me back. Yeah, I was in high school, I think. I would have been 12 or 13, maybe 14, something in that region.
Oh,
And yeah, well, I mean, I was, my whole school plus myself, we were all sort of coming into puberty and working out what all these weird feelings were and trying to determine exactly like if we wanted to date, who we wanted to date, who we thought was pretty, who we liked, who we had a crush on, all of those standard sort of teenage kid questions. And I think I remember emailing her with our like school email addresses. I was sitting in my living room and I emailed her and I was like, "Hey, like hypothetically, if you wanted to go on a date, what would you say? Like if I wanted to ask you out?" And she replied with like a Beatles song, and the title was like "I Want to Hold Your Hand," I think it was. And that was her like saying, "Yeah, I want to hold your hand, like I want to go on a date with you." And I thought that was, very romantic at the time. And so we went to the movies and we saw, God, I don't even remember what the movie was. Could have been anything. And I just remember like getting dropped off by my mum, meeting her at the front of the movie theater, and we walked in and it was so awkward and uncomfortable and nervous. And we sat there the entire time watching the movie in pretty much complete silence. And, it finished up and I think I put my arm around her shoulders at one point, and that was about as close as it got. Like that was pretty groundbreaking at the time. But yeah, it was this whole new frontier. I'd sort of had to contend with the idea of like, oh, what do you do on a first date? Like, how do I feel about this? What's going on in my head? What's going on in my body? Like, do I want to talk to her? How do I talk to her? How do I touch her? How do I like? Is it appropriate to touch her? Like, what do I do here? And yeah, I learned trial by fire.
and you initiated the date, and you were
Yeah,
12, 13 years old, and you knew in your mindset as a man to initiate that date. And so
it's
right
one of
now,
those things where like if you don't push for stuff, you're not going to get what you want. And I knew I wanted to go out with someone because I was into them. I had feelings for this person, and I wanted to. The only way I knew how to act upon that was by asking them out. That was just what you did.
yeah. So what would in society today, what would you a typical first date? What would you prefer? Because like with me, I would just prefer going to out for coffee or going for a walk in the park. Because if you go to dinner or to a movie, it's like, well, you can't have a conversation with this person if you're in a loud restaurant. So I prefer, okay, let's meet for coffee. Let's have a good conversation and or walk in the park. That way we get to know each other. And then the second date would be maybe dinner or something like that. What do you recommend when you talk to people as a first date setting?
So I agree with you entirely. I think dinner and movies are the two most overblown first date ideas. Like a movie in particular, you can't actually speak to the person that you're supposed to be on a date with. So it makes no sense to me why anybody would go on a first date to a movie. Dinner also, like if it's the problem is that you're locked into a certain amount of time with this person, and it's really quite a like focused experience, you know? You're there, you eat the food, you finish the food, there's the issue of the bill, so on and so forth. That trips a lot of people up. And then there's not a very easy way to sort of transition out of that unless there's something immediately available next to you. Like you're forced to just rely on one another and you don't have any escape or any sort of other circumstances. It's tricky. So if someone is going on a first date, coffee is a very safe bet. It's a very easy date. It requires very low investment. You show up probably only there for an hour or two. The problem I find with coffee is that it's hard to build any sort of like actual intimacy or connection. Like if it goes really well, coffee is not going to facilitate that connection actually developing into something more significant. It's a good way to make sure that you're not on a date with a serial killer. So that's like a really strong way to start things off. But yeah, if you're actually like confident or interested in this person and you think it's going to go well, it's tricky to sort of make coffee more than it is. So yeah, I like going on a walk. I like doing things. I'm a fan of action dates. I always think that if you're going on a first date, you should have some sort of like pretext or something to focus on. Like I'm a big fan of going to like play pool. I don't know why, that was just something I always found was good because it's private, but it's not. You're in a room with a bunch of other people, but it's only you two at that table. It's physical enough, but it's not like challenging. You're not sweating or anything. You can be bad at it if you want. You don't have to be good. There's no expectations. There's no pressure. There's usually like an opportunity to, grab a drink if you're the type of person that wants to do that on a first date. There's usually a bar there. So it's very easy. It's very risk free. But like you can go bowling, you can laser tag, you can do any sort of like actual activity where you've got something in front of you to sort of focus on, especially if the chemistry is not that good or if you're a bit uncomfortable or if you're a bit awkward. It gives you something to talk about on your date that you wouldn't have to try and prompt conversation from the other person if you weren't comfortable doing so. You don't have to go like, oh, what do you do for work? Like, where you from? You got any family? You can just be like, oh, you hit the ball really good with the stick. Like that was fun. You can make jokes about that. You can crack a smile.
That's good. I like that. Go and play pool. I'm not a real avid pool player, but that sounds.
Hey, look, I'm probably one of the worst pool players I've ever met, but Lord knows doesn't stop me from trying.
I like that. Playing pool. Wow. You're also a writer. Can we talk about your book?
We can, yeah. It's called "I'm Sorry I Egged Your House,"
Yeah.
which I thought was a fun little title. I got it. Well, it's inspired from the time that my house was egged, so it's technically not a first-person comment. I didn't egg anyone's house, but yeah, it was. I don't know. There was a particularly formative part of my life where, for one reason or another, my relationship with this particular woman went south, and she was incensed enough and passionate enough that she decided to come and chuck some eggs at my property.
Oh
But
my.
yeah, yeah, so that was a very eye-opening experience for me. But the book as a whole is about like my journey with relationships and figuring out like how to go from someone that knew essentially nothing about them or about how to develop a connection with another person to figuring all that stuff out, and then all of the stuff that happened after that, like figuring out what I wanted out of life, trying to develop the connections that I wanted, like making some, solid, reasonable friends, and just all of the stuff that comes with, growing up and developing and figuring out how you want to live your life and stuff like that. So yeah, I hope it's a lot of stories, a lot of insights, a lot of, discussions about my experiences personally, but I hopefully think that my experiences have been formative enough that people might be able to learn from them. So I like to share.
So after that experience, did you kind of reflect on what could have been better in that relationship, what you might have done, what?
Yeah, so one of the things about your house getting egged is that it's sort of hard to ignore. It's hard to get away from. You've got a very physical reminder that something in that relationship didn't quite go the way that either person might have wanted. And as much as, you can write that kind of behavior off, like no one should be egging anyone's house. But at a certain level, there was a reason that she felt the way that she felt. And while her behavior might not have been entirely appropriate, I'm sure that she, for at some level, felt the way that she did because of something that happened in our relationship. And that was, at least half my fault, if not more. So yeah, it does sort of confront you when something like that happens, with the reality that you might not have made all the right choices, that there was some mistakes there that you might need to correct. There's some behaviors that you keep up that you might want to look at. And that's what the book's about, is that, we start out with a preconceived notion of how our relationships are and how we are inside them. And with some time and some self-reflection and some trial and some error, you get to figure out like what is healthy and what makes sense and what's a good idea and what you need to sort of focus on and develop and what you might need to get rid of.
That's good. Because a lot of times we'll stay in a relationship too long than what we need to. Like we recognize things that we don't like that are non-negotiables, but we stick around hoping that that person will change, especially as women. Like we would give you a chance at the chance and we would ignore a red flag in a minute. Do you notice that? Like when you talk to women, and do you just straight shoot with them and say, he's showing you who he is. So why are
Oh
you?
yeah. I've had some outrageous questions. There was a woman that came to me and she was like, "Hey, my boyfriend, I've been with him for like 6 months. He doesn't wash himself. He doesn't clean his house. He doesn't like take care of anything. He doesn't have a job. So I'm financially supporting him. I'm doing all of his laundry. I'm prompting him to like brush his teeth, twice a week. And he yells at me a lot. Like, should I stay with him? Like, do I, can I fix this? Is this a situation I can salvage?" And I had to look at her and I'm looking at her. I'm like, what could you possibly salvage? What is there for this relationship that is in any way, shape, or form benefiting you? What are you possibly getting out of this that is worth sticking with someone with no care for themselves, no concept of basic hygiene, and clearly no consideration for you?
Mhm.
Like, I don't understand why it is that people will look at situations and start to explain away the red flags or the bad things.
Yeah.
Like the conversation around what standards are healthy and what we need to sort of expect for ourselves is like, that's a long conversation. But at a very basic level, we have boundaries, like wash yourself before you touch me. Like it's not rocket science, not a complex thing, Take a shower every once in a while. It's not gonna kill you. But yeah,
Exactly.
I think if we just kept some standards for what we accepted people doing in order to treat us a certain way, world would be a healthier place.
It would. Like even with not just with intimate relationships, friendships. If we see something right up front, just don't even, continue with it. Don't pursue it. But we just I think women, we're just naturally nurturers and we just want to help people and we feel like, oh, they're gonna change. But I've learned. It took me 49 years to learn, but I learned. Do you have any I did want to ask another question. With men, how long does it take y'all to realize this is the person for me? An average ballpark.
I think on some level, pretty much straight away. Like you can tell from the first time you interact with someone whether or not you two have similar values, similar things, similar thoughts, similar ways of speaking, similar mannerisms, similar sense of humor. Like all of those things that go into facilitating whether or not you would want to spend the rest of your life, arguably, with the same person. You can see those patterns very quickly, especially if you're looking for them, especially if you practice learning how to spot them. So I think most people on a very immediate level know exactly what type of relationship that they would have with this person from like, the first or second date. Now, that doesn't mean that, you can't get surprised or people can't change or that you can't foster a connection and grow from stuff. But in a lot of cases, if you meet someone that you are so compatible with that you could see spending the rest of your life with them, you will know it from a very immediate standpoint. Like you'll just know.
Yeah.
It's very hard to fake that kind of compatibility. You can't get around that in a lot of ways.
So if you have a woman that you're coaching and they say, I've been with this guy for a year, we haven't established what we are, where we stand, what is some advice you would give?
Well, I most of the time people that say that they have a goal in mind, and it's usually taking their relationship to the next level. And if it's been a year and that hasn't happened, we have to ask ourselves why that's the case and what circumstances led up to, being a year in without having even so much as had that conversation. And it's usually because both people have been pretty comfortable doing what they've been doing for a certain amount of time. Like they've both been pretty happy in that sort of vague dating stage or whatever it is before they have like the talk. You know what I mean? And the woman who will have the goal of pushing this to the next level is usually too afraid or too timid or too concerned about rejection to push that conversation forward. And the guy either doesn't know that that's the case or doesn't care or isn't interested in anything more. So he's not going to start the conversation. But, if she doesn't do it and he doesn't do it, then no one's going to do it. So
Right.
eventually someone has to start that conversation. And that unfortunately usually has to be the person that wants something more than is currently there. Because if they both had the same goal and they both wanted to talk about it, they would have. And if they were both happy with the current situation, then no one would need to talk at all and we'd just keep doing what we were doing. So yeah, women that put themselves in those positions or find themselves in those positions, they're unlucky a lot of times because they have to force themselves to have a conversation that has the risk of leading to them being rejected or leading to an outcome they might not be happy with. But it's the only way it goes forward because sitting around and hoping and waiting for the person to spontaneously decide that they're ready for something else when they're perfectly happy with what's going on already is a loser's game. That's how you end up disappointed.
Yeah, I like how you said the woman and the man, both people should be accountable.
Mm.
Somebody needs to step up and say, okay, what are we?
Yeah. Well, pretty much all of my advice works if you flip the genders. I would say the same thing to a man that was getting strung along by a woman that was not giving him the commitment he wanted. But like it or not, we usually see that women are the ones that want more commitment out of a man that isn't willing or currently able to provide it.
That's why I was gonna ask, do you get a lot of men that come to you and get advice as far as how do I tell this woman I want to commit to her?
Absolutely. Yeah, a lot of men are surprisingly emotional and surprisingly interested in getting commitment into their lives. There are so many men that are really gentle, vulnerable, fragile, emotional people, but you would never know because they never get the opportunity to express that to anybody. And they've been taught through experience and through media and through life lessons and through their culture that being how they are inside and being that emotional person is so unhealthy for them.
Mm-hmm.
It gets shut down very, very quickly. And so they never get that opportunity and it gets beaten out of them very, very, very quickly.
Wow, that's good. So when you hear that man, if a man is not where they're at in life financially, they haven't achieved their goals, they really don't want to be in a committed relationship. Do you see that with men? Are you
I
as a,
think
I mean, is that your mindset?
sometimes, I think a lot of men do know deep down that they're not as attractive a partner as they could be. Like if they don't have their shit together, if they don't have a good job, or if they're not
Mhm.
put together in a sense, they know that they're not 100% of what they could be. They're not living up to their personal potential. But that doesn't mean they don't want a relationship. A lot of people start searching for a partner when they're only at 50%, when they don't have a job or their job's particularly entry level. Like one of my partners that I'm with at the moment, I met her when I was working at a bar. It wasn't a particularly classy job. It wasn't something with a lot of status or, many prospects. And, we saw things in each other that had nothing to do with where we were in life. And we were happy developing our relationship up to this point. And now my prospects are better and I have more stuff going on and I have, more financial security and more stability and more of those like traditionally sort of boxes checked. And I might be considered more attractive now because of that. But I still wanted a relationship back then because that's still a human need. And that all factors into my happiness as a person. So, yeah, I would strongly encourage everybody working on themselves for as long and as hard as they're able and capable of doing. And, get your finances in order. If you're in debt or if you're broke, like sort that out. That's a part of life. That is something you're going to have to fix at some point. But there's no perfect time to start looking for a relationship. You're never going to be like fully squared away and ready. There's never like a day where you wake up and just go, yeah, today's the day. I'm fully done with everything else. I have the rest of my life 100% in order. Now I can go find a wife. Like that doesn't happen. You just have to be confident that whatever you are today is good enough and that tomorrow you're going to be better than the day before.
Wow, that is good. That's a good way to end it. And I want you to give us some give us out here that are trying to have a fruitful relationship with people, some lasting, encouraging words for our listeners and myself.
For everybody that has struggled with their personal relationships, if they've not made friends that they wanted to make, if they've not been able to find a relationship that they wanted, I have had more people hate me than I would have ever thought possible. If you went back in time and took a like memoir of mine to my younger self when I was a teenager or when I was a kid, I would have been absolutely blown away by the amount of people that think I am an idiot or that want nothing to do with me. But on the flip side of that, there are like tons of people in my life that absolutely love me and adore me, and that I have received such positivity into my life in ways that I never thought were possible. I think that in the same way that, my younger self would be startled by the amount of people that took negative things away from me, that he would also be really amazed by the amount of things that have come into my life. So through practice, through dedication, through like attempting to work at building relationships like it's a skill, like it's any other thing that you just need to develop with time, you can get better at it. You can be in more control of your social circumstances. You can be in control of if you're meeting people and if you're getting into relationships, if you're going on dates, if you're hooking up with people. All of these things are within your power to influence, and you can fix them if they're broken or change them if you don't like them. That you have the ability and the agency to do that.
Do you do online counseling? Do you have a website that people can read?
Yeah. Yeah, so all of my stuff you can find at cainparrish.com. That's CAIN, and then parish like the church.com. Or you can email me at cain@cainparrish.com if anyone wants to reach out for queries, personal coaching, if they want to, interact with me on some level. I encourage that kind of community building, because I mean, what kind of relationship coach would I be if I didn't try and maintain relationships with the people that listen to me and like what I have to say?
Definitely, and I'll put his contact information and episode details, and then we can find your book on Amazon or Audible.
So it's currently, I haven't got it like the publishing details finalized. So you can pre-order it through my website and it'll get distributed through there. But eventually, once it's, fully sorted out and ready to ship and so on and so forth, it'll be on Amazon, it'll be on Goodreads, it'll all those platforms.
Beautiful. All right, y'all. Y'all heard it from here. Life Conversations with Dr. Amy. Thank you, Mr. Cain Parrish, for this
Thanks for having me.
This is a good conversation. I hope everyone enjoys it and gets some from it, and reach out to Mr. Parrish if you need some advice, relationship advice. And this was good. And I'll let you go to sleep because you're in Australia.
Yeah, look, it's going to be a good nap now. I can tell you that for free.
Thank you so much. And you have a good night.
Hey, you too.
Thank you.